So I got a lot of questions and comments and like, what's the big deal and everything like that. So, and I appreciate the conversation. So I'm just going to try to break this thing down a little bit more. So earlier I mentioned Romans chapter 1, where the whole point of that chapter is that God has created everything to be a reflection of him and to actually glorify him, not for the things in and of themselves to be glorified or worshiped. Everything from animals, rocks, mountains, water, our fingerprint, everything is meant to reflect the various facets of the invisible God and leave us without excuse of saying that there is no God. When we look out on creation, it makes it obvious that there is a creator and a designer who is holy, who is wise, who is all powerful, right? Which is why, even as someone else mentioned, in heaven, there are things like gold and different stones and gems and things like that. But if you pay attention, as it's talked about in the book of Revelation, the object of affection, devotion, attention, worship, trust, all glory and power and honor is not to any of those things. It's to God and God alone. Created things were not meant to be worshiped. They were actually meant to point us to the Creator, to worship him, which is what we are made for. And so I find it interesting that really a lot of this conversation kind of reminds me of everything that happened in the very beginning in Genesis 1. God creates everything, generously shares it with humanity, but only gives them one boundary or rule. And he says, you can eat from any and every tree in the garden, but do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or you're going to die. Then here comes Satan, camouflaged as a serpent, and tricks Eve into believing that God is not as good as he says he is, isn't as trustworthy, and is holding out on her. He then deceives her and tricks her into believing that the very thing that God said would actually kill and destroy her would somehow actually be for her good and for her benefit. So ultimately, she and the first man, Adam, buy into this lie, disobey and rebel against God, and now we're here. And so he not only tricked her into believing that a created thing had more power than God himself, but that she could actually become God or become like God in partaking of something that God had forbidden. The Bible also says that rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, is one and the same. Meaning that one, God deems it wrong for us to try to control or manipulate the spiritual realm. But at its core, witchcraft is about rebelling against God and resisting and rejecting his authority. So while we're here, I may as well say that things like sacrificing children, aka abortion, divination, tarot cards, fortune telling, mediums who act like they're talking to your dead family members, but really they're chit-chatting with demons and familiar spirits, Ouija boards, magic, spells, charm, channeling, astrology, angel numbers, numerology, aka everything that's trendy right now. God draws a clear line against that. Why? Because we've got him. So really that was the point of my whole video. Do we really trust that Jesus is enough for us? And if we're depending on any of these things, maybe not.